People die only when we forget about them. In our house, we have a space I designed with so much eagerness when Guadalupe and I were dating. It's my spot, where I can be alone and away from all the noise. It's my office, a music room where I was able to set up, and now that I am an adult, the whims I had as a young man. In that office, I worked countless hours, and while my younger son was alive, I did it in his company. In that place, there were codes of silence. My wife and children, Abril and Ezequiel, always respected that space because they knew it was my place of concentration. Agustin never knew of that code. He was too young to understand about being quiet or respecting workspaces. So he, using the same immunity granted by his age, was the only one with the power to enter and break the silence and concentration. During his time in this life, he would play with my things, open the wastebasket, take whatever was inside and drop it on the floor to rummage through it. Once he entered this world, there were no codes of conduct. His mother couldn't tell him off because she didn't see him, and I turned a blind eye to all his mischiefs because I knew that as long as I let him play, he would let me work. It was a fair agreement, though an implicit one. The walls of my office were his art gallery, where he would exhibit his work made with crayons or pens he robbed from me to express his skills with colors as I watched him. But I didn't say a word to him because I understood that what may have seemed like scribbles to any adult at that time, one day would be the traces of his childhood. The sound system that had speakers scattered all around the room was his main attraction. He would invest a lot of time putting objects, which I never saw, into the speakers. When he got bored, he would crawl up to my flip-flops and paint my toenails with markers. Other times, he would take my shoes off and wear them. It was funny watching a midget in large shoes walking around the room and crying out to me, "Ook!" That's "look" in baby language. He was passionate about large boxes. He would hide inside them and call for me as I looked for him around the room, pretending I couldn't find him, until I opened the box and shouted, "Here it is!" And he would laugh out loud, showing his beautiful teeth. A few hours later, he would recline in the sofa and stare at the ceiling while he enjoyed his bottle of warm milk. When boredom set in, he would get up, turn on my keyboard, and start making music and singing, all in my presence. Even though there was so much entropy on the environment, after a few hours my brain got used to it and I managed to ignore it so that I could work. His mother was working at her office in the newspaper, and his siblings were at school. So it was just him and me for several hours every day. The space I had designed with so much dedication, and which had been for a very long time a place where I could concentrate, wasn't appealing anymore when he left. That place grew colder and lost its magic little by little. Eventually, I stopped going and stopped doing everything I did there, the music, the movies, my office hours, and my moments of solitude. One night, my wife and I went in. We saw that it was abandoned and decided to bring the sound system to our living room. "Why don't you come to your office anymore?" she asked me. I didn't want to deny the obvious. The truth is that this place is no longer as pleasant as it once was. When we started setting up the sound system in our living room, I heard objects crashing inside the speakers. It was like a rattle. We lifted them up, looked inside the holes where the air of the sound comes out, and little objects began to fall. We were so overwhelmed by that moment that the emotion became visible in our faces. The speakers were the secret hiding spot where our son, Agustin, stashed all his treasures. The first object we managed to take out was a little red car. We still can't be sure if it was one of his toys or if he had borrowed it from his brother Ezequiel. When we saw it, my wife, my children, and I remembered him with a smile. Our youngest son left almost 7 years ago, and he keeps surprising us still today with his mischiefs. Ezequiel took the toy and said to us, "I will keep it for him all my life." Among his treasures, there were also little Spider-Man action figures, bits of crayons, and even half-eaten cookies. Do we miss him? More than we can explain. We find comfort in knowing that we lived by his side all his life, and what we have learned from him has remained with us so that we can build an indestructible shield of undying love in our family. Every time I write, I try to reflect on what I have lived so I can learn something new. They say that people only die when we forget about them. That's why I always think that my son will live forever. Today I can understand a little better what the American journalist Norman Cousins meant by, "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside us while we live."